Hello. This section, we're going to talk about forms and HTML inputs. This is a rather large or broader topic that you need to understand in order to grasp HTML fully. Forms are everywhere on web pages. For example, if you go to facebook.com, you can see this is a form. It requires your username, email, phone number, whatever, and then it requires a password and then a submit button. And this has obviously been customized and looks different from what we're going to make, but we're going to start with the foundations. You need to really lock down. We're going to go to our MDN documentation. Just Google search MDN. We're going to go to references, HTML, and then we're going to go to HTML elements. And then we're going to scroll down to form. All right, let's look at a form. So we don't have to write this out. I just want to go over it. So you can see it's a form tag, and inside of it, it's using divs to separate individual elements, but we can ignore these for now. And so let's make this simpler. And you can edit these inside. Let's see. Remove these divs so you can see this a little bit easier. Okay. Done. So inside of forms, you can see that the form has an action. And an action, if we look down here in our attributes, let's scroll down, action. The URL that processes the form submission. This value can be overwritten by a form action attribute on a button input type equals submit. That's confusing. We haven't learned anything about inputs yet, right? So let's just pocket this and come back. Let's look at what method is. Oh, method. Let's go down to the docs on method. We haven't learned anything about methods yet. Let's see if this is going to method. Let's go to method. And you can see this is the HTTP method to submit the form with, possibly case sensitive values. So post, get, and dialog. I doubt you'll ever use dialog, but you will use post or get. Now, we don't know anything about what post or get is yet, and that's okay. You don't need to know what post or get is at this point in your journey. But what you do need to know is that this attribute exists and that you will need to specify on your form how to submit data. So the action says, hey, when somebody submits form by clicking submit, it will have an action to go to a website and it will communicate with that website using this method. We don't need to know anything else. Just press the I believe button for now. When we get into JavaScript, we will definitely dive further into this topic. But what you need to know for now, and in particular, is the input type. And type here is key. So for each one of these inputs, there is, I'm going to reset this and it's going to look a little bit uglier. For each one of these, there's an input. So there is a validation associated with this. So if I just use numbers here and I say numbers here, click subscribe, chances are this is going to error out. It says enter an email because there's validations associated with the type email. Now, what you can also see here is that there's labels and inputs, okay? So labels attach name to an input. An input has an attribute called name, and a label will have an attribute for. These two connect each other, the label to the input name. Without this, it won't work properly. Okay, I hope I haven't lost you yet, but I promise this is all going to make sense here in a moment. There's also this attribute called ID, which we're going to discuss in the next section when we start talking about divs. For now, divs is a foreign topic we don't need to discuss. And then lastly, there is this required attribute, which does not have a key value pair like in other attributes that you've seen so far. Required is when, let's say you're going to submit a username and password. If you don't submit the password with it, then the required would validate and ensure that it cannot submit until you also include a password. Okay, so let's take another look at Facebook.com. Okay, Facebook.com. So you can see here that this is type email and this is type password. So if I type in here, you can't see it. This is a danger with password managers. Now, don't take that as me saying don't use a password manager. In fact, I strongly recommend using a password manager. But if your password manager were left unlocked or your computer were left unlocked, somebody could come and use your password manager to input your password, and then they could right click and inspect the element, and they could edit this input type in the HTML browser, edit HTML, and you can click and change this from password to text and click outside of it. Now you can see what I typed in that field. You'll see that there's a lot of websites that use similar tactics to hide things, such as news websites, Quizlets that provide quiz answers, and they try to feature gate it. You pay, you can come into the HTML and remove classes. You can edit the HTML. Now you're not actually editing this anywhere but your browser. And in fact, if I refresh, it goes right back to the way it was. So all it is that one session that you're using on your browser, you're editing it, and that's it. Okay, in this form, we can see that this has a bunch of extra information. There's ARIA label, which I strongly recommend that you go and look at ARIA when we start talking about WCAG and Ally. But for now, you don't need to know what it is. You do realize that, or you will recognize here that there's the ID, there's the name, there's the class, and there's the type. We're going to create a basic form without any more delay. In the next video, we're actually going to write a form.